Welcome everyone to another deep dive. I'm really excited about this one. We're going to be diving into the rise and fall of the island kingdom of Númenor, and we've got a lot of ground to cover today.
Yeah, it's a big one. Númenor, man. Where do we even start?
Yeah, we've got some great source material to guide us. First and foremost, a Calibeth, right? That gives us that sweeping historical narrative, the grand overview.
Absolutely, a Calibeth, that's our foundation. And then to really flesh it out, we've got a description of Númenor which, dives into the culture, the geography, the nitty-gritty of life on the island.
And then there's Aldarion and Arendis, the mariner's
Oh
wife.
yeah, that one's fascinating, right? It gives us this personal look at the internal struggles within Númenor's ruling class. Like you can see those cracks starting to form.
And of course, looming over it all is the fall of Númenor, Sauron's influence, and the ultimate destruction of this once great civilization.
It's going to be epic.
So maybe to start, just to set the stage, who are the Númenorians? Where do they come from?
So the Númenorians were men, but not just any men. They were descended from the Dane. Think of the most badass heroes of men. Those who fought alongside the elves against Morgoth, the first Dark Lord.
Wow. So like the OG heroes?
Exactly. And as a reward for their valor in those wars, the Valar, those angelic beings who shaped the world, they gifted them this island, this paradise called Númenor, situated in the great ocean west of Middle-earth.
Okay, so we've got this island rising from the sea, gifted to these legendary heroes. It's like a recipe for greatness, right?
Right, and it really was. They were blessed with incredibly long lifespans. I'm talking centuries. And their knowledge and skills in crafts, seafaring, statecraft, you name it, it was off the charts. They surpassed all other men.
It's like a utopian experiment almost, like they were given this perfect setting and all the advantages.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And especially in the early years, there was this close relationship with the elves fostering learning and cultural exchange. It was a golden age. They built magnificent cities, mastered shipbuilding, explored the world with their powerful fleets.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But we've also got a description of Númenor, which gives us a more visceral sense of the place, right?
Totally. We get these vivid descriptions of the island's diverse landscape. You've got these fertile coastal plains, then the land rises up into these central highlands, and at the very heart of it all, the majestic peak of Meneltarma, the Mountain of Awe.
Wow. It's like I can picture this blend of natural beauty and then these incredible cities. What were they like?
Oh man, picture this Armenelos, the capital city, with its gleaming white towers and bustling harbor Ravenna, this vibrant port city known for its shipyards. And then you have Andunier in the west, a haven for those who remain devoted to the Valar and the old ways, the faithful as they were called.
The faithful. That's interesting. Were they like a distinct group within Númenor?
Yeah, they represent this undercurrent of tension that starts to emerge as Númenor grows in power and splendor. The faithful clung to the original values, reverence for the Valar, respect for their decree forbidding men from sailing west towards the Undying Lands.
Ah, the Forbidden Lands. Okay, so we're starting to see some cracks here. What was so special about these lands, and why were the Númenorians forbidden to go there?
The Undying Lands, also known as Valinor. It was the realm of the Valar themselves, considered beyond the reach of men. The ban was meant to protect men from the potent and potentially corrupting influence of immortality.
Okay, so this is interesting. We have this incredibly advanced civilization blessed with long life, but there's this line drawn in the sand, this tension between their ambition and the limits placed upon them. How did this play out?
Well, that's where Aldarion and Arendis comes in. It offers this fascinating look at the larger forces at work within Númenor Aldarion, the Mariner King. He was consumed by this thirst for exploration, spending years at sea pushing the boundaries of the known world.
A classic adventurer pushing the limits. But where does Arendis fit into all of this?
Arenis, his wife. She represents a more grounded perspective. She values stability, the well-being of the people, nurturing what they already possess. She resents Aldarion's prolonged absences and the risks he takes.
It's like their conflict mirrors this growing divide within Númenor itself, right?
Exactly. On one hand, you have this allure of exploration expansion, pushing the limits. And on the other, there's this call for preservation stability, honoring the ancient covenants with the Valar. It reminds us that even in a society as advanced as Númenor, human nature, with all its complexities, still plays a role.
Right, so we have this glorious kingdom blessed by the Valar, yet wrestling with these internal tensions. And this growing fascination with the Forbidden now. How does Sauron, the ultimate embodiment of evil in Middle-earth, enter this picture?
That's where things take a dark turn. Remember, the Númenorians, despite their blessings, were still mortal? And as their lifespan stretched on for centuries, a new fear began to consume them. The fear of death.
So instead of enjoying their extended years, they became obsessed with their mortality.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of ironic.
It is. And this fear, coupled with their growing pride, created a fertile ground for Sauron's manipulations. Sauron at this time was still fair in form, a master of disguise and deception. He began whispering lies, playing on their fear of death and their envy of the elves' immortality.
So Sauron swoops in, exploiting their vulnerabilities,
Hmm.
turning them against the very beings who gifted them Númenor in the first place. Talk about a classic villain move. But how did the Númenorians, so wise and powerful, fall for his tricks?
That's the tragedy of it all. The longer they lived, the more their perception of time became distorted. They started to view the Valar's gift of long life not as a blessing, but as a cruel tease.
And Sauron was right there to fan the flames of their resentment. So the stage is set. We have a powerful kingdom blessed but plagued by inner turmoil, and a cunning deceiver waiting to capitalize on their weakness. What happens next? How does this all lead to the downfall we know is coming?
Buckle up, because things are about to get really intense.
Yes.
This is where the Númenorian saga takes a turn for the dramatic. Enter Ar-Pharazôn, the last and most powerful king of Númenor. He's like the poster child for hubris and defiance. Everything that has been brewing beneath the surface of Númenor, he embodies it.
Ar-Pharazôn. Yeah, he's the one who goes head-to-head with the Valar, right? Tries to take them on.
Oh yeah, he doesn't just challenge them. He tries to usurp their power. Remember, Sauron had been working on the Númenorians for centuries, poisoning their minds, whispering that the Valar were holding out on them, hoarding immortality out of jealousy. And Ar-Pharazôn, he buys into this hook, line, and sinker.
So he decides to break the ultimate taboo sailing west to the Undying Lands, to seize immortality by force. It's crazy. I mean, the audacity to challenge the very beings who shaped the world.
Audacity doesn't even cover it. He amasses the largest armada the world had ever seen. Think thousands of ships. A display of power meant to intimidate even the Valar.
So did he actually reach Valinor? I mean, did he pull it off?
He did. Ar-Pharazôn landed on the shores of the Undying Lands, something no man had ever done before, but his victory was short-lived. The Valar, they see what's happening. They see the depths of Númenor's corruption, the threat it poses. So they appeal to a higher power. They go straight to Ilúvatar, the one god, the ultimate authority.
And that's when the hammer drops. The cataclysm, the fall of Númenor. It's like a story straight out of a Greek tragedy.
It's a turning point in Tolkien's entire legendarium. The world was literally reshaped. Númenor, this island kingdom that seemed like it would last forever. It's swallowed by the sea in a single catastrophic event.
Gone. Just like that. It's hard to wrap your head around the scale of the destruction.
Yeah.
An entire civilization wiped out. It's a reminder that even the mightiest empires, even those blessed by the gods, they're not invincible. They're not above the consequences of their actions.
Exactly. Ar-Pharazôn's pride. His defiance. It brought about the annihilation of his people and the reshaping of the world. It's a cautionary tale for the ages about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the perils of defying divine authority.
They were survivors, right? The
Mhm.
faithful, those who stayed true to the Valar, they managed to escape.
Yeah, a small group led by Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew what was coming. So they prepared ships, gathered those who shared their beliefs, and set sail east just as the cataclysm hit.
And they landed on the shores of Middle-earth,
Right.
becoming the founders of Gondor and Arnor.
You got it. So even though Númenor is gone, its story doesn't end there. Their legacy lives on in the bloodlines of the faithful and in the echoes of their lost glory.
It's amazing how Tolkien weaves everything together, right? This tapestry of interconnected events spanning thousands of years. But let's zoom back in on Númenor itself. We've talked about their achievements, their flaws, their downfall. But what about their culture, their everyday lives? What was it like to be a Númenorian?
Well, one thing that really stands out is their obsession with lineage. They kept meticulous records of their genealogies, revered their ancestors, placed huge importance on the continuity of their bloodlines.
Makes sense considering their long lifespans. It must have shaped their entire worldview, their art, their architecture, everything.
Absolutely. Their architecture was all about grandeur permanence. They built with materials like marble and granite, things that would last for ages. Their cities were designed with order and symmetry, a reflection of their desire for stability control.
It's almost like they were trying to impose order on time itself, to resist the inevitable change and decay that comes with mortality.
That's a really interesting point. They were grappling with this paradox, right? They had these incredibly long lifespans, but they were still aware of their mortality. And that awareness, I think, played a huge role in their downfall. It fueled their envy of the elves' immortality, made them susceptible to Sauron's manipulations.
So the very gift that set them apart, their long lives, it also became their undoing. It's tragic, but also kind of beautiful in a way.
It speaks to the complexity of the human condition, our desires, our
Fair.
fears. Numenor's story reminds us that even the most blessed societies, even those with seemingly everything going for them, they're not immune to the corrosive forces of pride, envy, the fear of death.
And it also highlights the importance of choice. Right, Sauron may have influenced them, but ultimately the Númenóreans made their own decisions. They chose to defy the Valar.
Absolutely. Sauron was a master manipulator,
Yeah.
but he couldn't control their every thought and action. They had agency, they made choices, and those choices had consequences.
Which brings us back to the faithful. They seem to have made different choices, held on to a different set of values. What can we learn from them?
The faithful are a reminder that even when everyone around you is giving in to temptation, it's possible to stay true to your principles. They held on to their reverence for the Valar, their respect for the ancient covenants. And in doing so, they preserved a spark of Númenor's legacy, a spark that would eventually help shape the future of Middle-earth.
Their survival wasn't just luck either, right? They actively prepared for the coming doom. They built ships. They gathered those who shared their beliefs. They understood that even amidst all the grandeur and power of Númenor, there were forces at play beyond their control.
Right. It was a combination of wisdom, foresight, and a deep faith in something greater than themselves, a stark contrast to the hubris and short-sightedness that consumed the rest of Númenor.
It's inspiring to see that even in the darkest of times, there are those who choose hope, who choose to act with wisdom and courage to preserve what's truly valuable.
Their story resonates with us today because it reminds us that we always have a choice. We can succumb to fear and despair, or we can choose hope. We can choose to act with wisdom and courage and to try to make a difference in the world.
Their story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, individual choices matter. But stepping back for a moment, we've covered a lot of ground here. Númenor's rise, their culture, their tragic flaws, their ultimate demise. What for you is the most enduring legacy of Númenor? What lessons can we learn from their story? What can we take away from this and apply to our own lives?
It's tough to pick just one thing, right? Numenor's story is so rich, so complex. But I think what stays with me is that idea that no matter how advanced a civilization is, no matter how blessed, how gifted, they're still subject to the human condition. They're not above it.
Right. It's like a universal truth. Even in this fantastical setting with these larger-than-life characters, you still see those same fundamental struggles: ambition, pride, the fear of death. It makes you realize that Númenor's story isn't just some far-off legend. It's a reflection of ourselves, of our own world.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so powerful, so relevant. It's a reminder that power without wisdom, without humility, it can be incredibly destructive.
And that even when things seem hopeless, even when the odds are stacked against you, individual choices still matter. The faithful, they chose to resist the tide of corruption, to hold on to their values. And because of that, a spark of Númenor's legacy survived. It's a powerful reminder that we always have a choice, even in the darkest of times.
Yeah, and there's another lesson here too, I think, in the Númenóreans' relationship with time. They had these incredibly long lifespans, but they became so fixated on their mortality, on their eventual end, that they lost sight of the present moment. They forgot to appreciate the beauty and the wonder of life as it was happening.
It's like they were so busy chasing immortality that they forgot to actually live. It makes you think about how we spend our own time, right? Are we so focused on the future, on achieving some distant goal, that we forget to appreciate the journey, the simple joys of being alive? It's a trap that's easy to fall into.
Númenor's story is a cautionary tale about that very thing, about the danger of losing sight of what truly matters.
And the importance of balance,
Mm.
right? The Númenóreans, they had all these gifts: long life, knowledge, power. But they didn't have the wisdom to use those gifts responsibly. They became obsessed with control, with defying the natural order of things. And ultimately, it led to their destruction.
It's a reminder that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We're meant to live within certain boundaries, to accept the ebb and flow of life and death. The Númenóreans tried to transcend those boundaries, and their hubris brought about their downfall.
So Númenor's story, it's both a warning and an inspiration, right? It's a warning against the dangers of pride, the futility of trying to cheat death. But it's also an inspiration to live with purpose, to make choices that align with our values, and to cherish the time we have.
Yeah, Númenor's legacy lives on, not just in the history of Middle-earth, but in the hearts and minds of everyone who encounters their story. It makes us think about our own lives, our own choices, our own place in the grand scheme of things. It challenges us to ask ourselves, what kind of legacy will we leave behind?
That's a powerful question. We may not have the lifespans of the Númenóreans, but our actions, our choices, they have an impact. They ripple outward. Affecting the world around us, Numenor's story reminds us that we have the power to choose a path of wisdom, humility, compassion, a path that leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful existence.
And that even though our time in this world is finite, we can strive to create something that endures, a legacy of kindness, creativity, love, something that will outlive us all.
What a thought-provoking way to end our deep dive into the epic and tragic tale of Numenor. It's been a journey, but I think we've all learned something along the way. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking knowledge in all its forms.